Thanks again for staying with us on the program TMI Monday. We go straight to conversation segment, and today we're looking at the Supreme Court's judgment on the governorship election and the many questions against the background of the fact that in recent times many of the judgment, or most of the judgments, or the judgments coming from the Apex Court appears to be a bit controversial. But we'll start off with the one from Bayelsa State, which for many analysts was a disaster waiting to happen against the background of how the deputy governor acted leading to that election. I mean, at the moment, nobody can tell for sure what's his actual name. From his primary school, okay, let's say from his nursery school, through his primary, secondary, university, NYC, and so many other fronts. Well, that's our take-off point, but let's meet our panelists. Let me thank very especially Malam Nuruddin Asunoge is a lawyer and also an Islamic scholar. Malam Nuruddin, many thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers.
We also have with us in the studio Barrister Awo Osagi. Barrister Awo Osagi, many thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. And hello, viewers at home.
Dr. Don Pedro Obaseki is a media and political consultant. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me too.
Well, if we have the time, I'm sure Olu Martins will also join this discussion. But let me start off with Malam Nuruddin Asunoge. Bayelsa State, what has happened there? Was it a disaster waiting to happen? Are there people or institutions who could easily point to that made such a scenario to play out against the background that the substantive candidate in that election was David Lyon of the APC, and Supreme Court held that because it's a joint ticket, both of them have to go. I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Well, thank you. I want to begin by saying that whatever it was that happened in Bayelsa is most lacrimose, is a thing that should have been avoided. We had expected that it should be avoided. And again, one had always thought, and one perhaps is left with this option now, that the possibility of the Supreme Court redeeming itself appears to flicker endlessly. Having said that, what were the issues? In ordinary parlance, you begin to talk about the issue of misnomer when there are discrepancies in name, or when an individual elects to spell out its name in a way that creates some confusion. But in this particular case, the issue of identity was not in question. I do not know, I wait to be enlightened, of any statute in the country today that says it is an anathema, as it were, for you to correct an error via an affidavit. If the Supreme Court judgment is saying what is saying, that by implication, what it had not said was that those documents were forged. If those documents were forged, the deputy governor of APC would have been guilty, or could be said to have committed two offenses. One of forgery, and the second perjury, deposing to an affidavit. The court didn't say so. Now, what again was bad for him was that there was a studious attempt, when lawyers want to, dwell in the realm of technicality. What was done was to approach the court. The PDP approached the court via originating summons. What does an originating summons do? It is to look at issues, the facts, look at documents, look at statute. It is not one that provides an opportunity for oral explanation as against a written summons. Now, if the individual says, I am the owner of these documents, was that an impossibility? I'll tell you most frankly, in our experience, there's a particular lady who unfortunately suffered a misfortune. She entered the university. 3 times she had attempted to write JAM. She was not successful. The only time she became successful was when she came across a man who said, I have no child of my own, and your mother has just you alone, and I'm marrying your mother, so you become my daughter. And so she did a change of name. The primary school, whatever, was the same, the secondary was the same, but that with which she now wrote JAM and came into the university with an affidavit was carrying a different name. At the final point of clearance, they said, no, we won't clear you because there were issues. I said, was it a forgery? So you find out that there was obviously a miscarriage of justice.
On the part of the Supreme Court?
On the part of the Supreme Court. And that, of course, was a thing we should have seen to happen. What some persons have done, if they choose to be clever, it's like when run up to Edo State government, Edo State election. The then APC candidate, Godwin Obaseki, said, my credentials are missing. All he did was to depose to an affidavit. So he didn't need to come with any credentials that you scrutinize. Oshomole had same whatever. If we had, perhaps it was to preempt all of this, that those fellows in the hierarchy of APC probably did what they did, that evicted Onoge. Otherwise, Buhari's WAEC is spelled MED as opposed to the Muhammadu, which he now answers. So these are issues, and for me, they are misnomer that the affidavit should have dealt with, except we are saying that there was an issue of forgery.
All right. Barrister Awosage, let's get your thoughts on the perspectives of the law of this BAYELSA election.
Thank you very much. What has happened in BAYELSA is rather unfortunate. What happened in BAYELSA is what we'll learn from. Now, if you take a critical look at the happening there, you know, it didn't happen immediately. Now, someone had said, you haven't certificates. I remember years ago, it's just like saying you have committed an offense. Like Malam had just said, it didn't start that day. That was not the first time that, you know, allegation had come up. People have made comments about it. It's a well-known fact amongst his people. Some said, well, he's using somebody's certificates. And you have not cleared the air on that. And you have hung on all the way. You know, even if the Supreme Court have acted in its wisdom in that light, if we want to go on to say that the man in question, who is Adi, what is he saying now? Has he come out with a statement? Has he said anything? So in all terms, we can begin to say, well, it's like he's as guilty as charged. Now, if you know, like he had rightly stated, that we have relations, we could depose to affidavits, we could have this, we could have that, you know, that's correct. It's true, you could come out to say, this is what led to this.
This is who I am now,
yes.
This is my name now, well, and there's an affidavit to support.
Affidavit to support, yes. Like, you know, we have it all over. Each time, especially for our folks that have traveled and they keep traveling all the time, they want to fit into certain character, they, you know, the post affidavit. Even the then Governor Adam Soshomole said, it's something you can change in the morning and change in the evening, you know, in one of his talk. Why is this man calm? Why is he quiet about it? So these are the previous. So if the Supreme Court had acted in that manner, I will not blame the Supreme Court, because the Supreme Court, you know, as it stands, is the Supreme Court. Yeah. And if you have anything against the Supreme Court, I think the NJC is there for you to vent your grievances, as the case may be. And again, if we come back to this whole thing, you see, we talked about the joint ticket. Many have said, oh, why will David Leon be roped in? Oh, yes, it's a joint ticket. It's, you know, it's not just you alone. Yeah. If it's affecting the hand, remember the case of you know, James Faleke and Abubakar Awudu, yes, of the Kogi elections. Yes. We saw what happened. They were celebrating, gave Bada red card, and he won the election. But he had not been sworn in. Now, if the man had been sworn in, it would have become another issue altogether. He is not the governor yet. He had not been sworn, he had not taken oath of office. He was just an elected person.
Even the results were not declared yet.
The results were not declared at the time. Okay. So, if you look at that critically, now, James Faleke would have, he wanted to be governor, and God said, no, it's not possible. Because the man, the other, man or the man that lead the team is no more.
Yeah.
So they wanted to do it, which would have created another legal crisis to make him the deputy governor to Yaya Bello and all of that, all put together. All that would have become another issue in court again. But he said no, he must be governor, and all of that are played out. So in all, if you take a look at it critically, why is the gay or whatever his name is, why is he calm? Why is he not reacting? Why is he not leading some protests? Why is he not saying this is what? I remember when we were in school those days, even if he's not going to be for anything, when they were doing screening, I remember
perhaps he knows the game is up.
No. What I'm trying to say, at least you should. You may like when they said some of our folks were not having certificates.
Yes.
You know, the then Governor Lucky Jones time, and they said students should come for revalidation or screening of your certificates. Those, a lot of students came out. We have our certificates. We are not court boys. We are not miscreants. We are only agitating for this. You cannot tag all of us as not savvy, not intellectually capable to be students. And they came out and cleared themselves. So even if the court will not clear you for future reference, I think we should explore that.
Pedro Obaseki's thoughts on the outcome of the BAYELSA.
I don't know I don't know whether I should speak like a lawyer now. You know, but I thank God that we are not ignorant of the law. And as lawyers too, it is important that we help people in this kind of situation. You see, BAYELSA, like he rightly said, was a time bomb waiting to happen. But I just want to quickly talk on two things that Malam Asunogi said. There is a 24-page judgment, and the judgment declared the affidavits, because it had about 17 affidavits, but it declared the recent parts of the recent affidavits that were sworn between August and September 2018, there were about 4, 6, or 5 of them, as forgeries. That there were forgeries of the forgery of the forgery.
To cover the forgery.
To cover the last forgery. And why did they say that? No, they said they actually requested for the address of the notary public that he swore to. So those affidavits he had, none was sworn to in a competent court of law. Neither were they sworn to before any registrar of any registered court. That is an issue. So if we look at it, I think that, unfortunately, I also saw what you sent to me, which I also said maybe when we get here we'll clear it. There's a difference between a pre-election issue, which this is, a clear case of a pre-election issue. Don't forget that just a few days before he was removed, the Supreme Court actually affirmed that David Lyon was the proper candidate
of the
APC. But that was not a pre-election issue.
That was a post-election issue.
Thank you. Which, when you look at it in vis-a-vis what happened in other states, either even there was the one that happened in River State, where Omeya was removed and his deputy was left. They are very different scenarios.
Okay, we'll talk about all of that, but let's just take a short break. So Reverend Lou Martins will join this conversation. Remember, the focus is to look at some of the recent judgments by the Supreme Court in recent times. Some say they are conflicting, some say they are controversial, because as we know, law is based on precedent. All right, so we'll take a short break. We'll be back with you in a moment.
Thank you very much for joining us on the program, Healthy Living. What is the kidney?
The kidney is an excretory organ in the body, which is for metabolism.
Tuberculosis affects many organs in the body, but the common ones it usually affects is the lungs.
Epilepsy is a neurological problem.
Okay.
It is an injury in the brain which causes someone to begin to convulse, to go into fits.
It is curable, but the cure is a long-term thing.
If you eat well and avoid those risk factors that will make your immunity to be down, then the risk of contracting tuberculosis will be reduced.
If you're healthy, then you're wealthy.
Thanks again for joining us on the program this morning on ITV. In case you're just joining us, but if you've been with us since 7 a.m. when the show started, we truly treasure that partnership. We've got Reverend Olu Martins joining us now. Olu Martins, many thanks for joining us on the program.
Good morning, and let me apologize for coming late. The traffic around UBTH and Univan is building every day, so maybe somebody should, X-Man should do something about it.
Okay, so let's get your thoughts and perspectives on the recent Supreme Court judgment on the BAYELSA state governorship election. You've been following, I guess.
Yeah, I almost feel like singing the song we used to sing in university days. When I remember David Leon, water run away my eye. Because they just ruined that man. It's, you know, you can talk about all of the intricacies of courts, but the duty of due diligence was, the onus of due diligence was on the part of the party. I mean, I was in church on Sunday and we're almost praying for David Leon. If it was his own problem, Jesus Christ said, the man who has lifted up his heels, and eaten with me, has lifted up his heels against me. So if I was at fault, then I can beat myself. But I'm not the person that is at fault. I won election, and by the election result, almost double. So it's clear that it was a mandate that was, you know, that was freely given by the people. And then you are doing dress rehearsal. And then upon dress rehearsal, you hear the saddest news, you know, of your life. I mean, if a man wants to, you know, get married, the least he can do is to ensure that he passes HIV test. That's the least that he can do. Oh, the family of the woman, those are, you know, trivialities. The point is that you by yourself, you have spoiled your own, you know, case. So we can go on and do, you know, all of the analysis, because like Don Pedro said, I saw what you sent to me. And then say, now friends we fall, now he make goat take jump, enter compound. All right? That Bishop Idahosa used to say when he was alive, if people say that you are a thief, don't argue with them. Just make sure that you are not stealing. So nobody could have been able to accuse you if the records were straight. You know, that argument ab initio will not have come up at all. So all of the analysis we're doing about Supreme Court is that, for me, is misplaced. We must ask ourselves the question. I heard that Mr. President has had a meeting with the governor of Jigawa, another governor who was the chairman
of the screening committee.
Of the screening committee, and we're asking the question, what exactly happened? I also listened to the interview of the national, chairman in one of the elections, one of the penultimate election, that there was a need for screening, and in his words, so that the opposition party does not take advantage of a process that was not properly done by, the ruling party. So you have, a candidate who is, who can win election for you, and then you attach him with a weak link. So if you look at, leadership and group dynamics, your team
is not as strong as the strongest of your link. But your team is as strong as the weakest link of your link. You know, so I imagine how, you know, David, you know, Leon, you know, must be feeling. My heart, you know, goes for him, all right, to see the promised land, and like Moses, you don't even get there, you know, at all. So I think that we should begin to ask the national leadership of the All Progressive Congress, how did this? It's a monumental disaster, both locally
we'll come to that
and
point.
internationally.
We'll come to that point. Malam Nuruddin, I heard some people say, well, this is perhaps a compensation for the PDP against the outcome of the Imo State judgment by the same Supreme Court. And then you interface that line of thinking with some of the judgments that have come out from the Supreme Court in recent times. We can easily make reference to the case of James Faleke of the then APC, was not allowed to inherit Abubakar Audu's votes in the Kogi governorship election, even though they were on a joint ticket. Dr. Don Pedro made reference to that. That was a pre-election matter. And then you have, in 1999, the running mate to Governor Abubakar Muazu of Bauchi State was dragged to Supreme Court for presenting fake certificate. The same Supreme Court then nullified the election and ordered a fresh election. All right, and then in 2007, Supreme Court sacked Governor Celestino Meha for retaining his deputy, Tele Ikolo, in Rivers State. And of course, now we have Deji Remio, and all the many names that he has. We don't know which exact one, which is most correct now to call him. So what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts?
Well, you see, yes, the Supreme Court is about the only court that has the power to overrule itself. But it doesn't do that on flippant whatever ground. There must be solid ground for doing so. If you look at the issue of Faleke, what was the pronouncement of the Supreme Court then? It was that the vote was for the party, not for the individual. Again, do not forget that that was exactly what played itself out in the case of Amechi, how Amechi became governor without necessarily coming before people to canvass for vote. As it relates to the issue of Imo, yes, some persons may have argued, because some persons too have argued that the fact that, like he said, you can begin to say, yes, there are some issues there. You dealing with a party, for example, that appears to be in total disarray, even when it is the party in power. It is its own greatest opposition. There have been crises in different parts of the country as it relates to that party. The one who is supposed to be the overall leader of the party had experienced the most peaceful somnolence, even while there is a conflagration in his home, talking about Mr. President. Well, I haven't said all of that. You find out that if the party was a party that was itself organized, the party should have done precisely what PDP did when the presidential panel, whatever was to go on. They said, Bukacha, you can't be there. So why would they allow Mary Odili, for example, to be there? Do not forget that I'm coming. She gave the late judgment.
Yes.
Whether Bukacha was going to be partial or not, the likelihood of being, do not forget that when Wike came celebrating his victory in court during the first term, Wike said, we are grateful to our dad, referring to Peter Odili. He told me those to see, and I saw them, and today we have gotten the verdict. Whatever that meant, those were not words put in his mouth. So you could ordinarily be saying, no, would Mary Odili, whose husband is in that political party, like they argued in case of Bukacha and all that and the rest. Again, when you come to the Imo election, what was the Supreme Court supposed to do? There is a difference between law and justice, and every law ultimately acquires significance only to the extent to which it serves the purpose of justice. Now, Leon won overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
The very first time in Bayelsa, there was an election where knockouts were not shot or fired. So it will mean that the people were decided as to whom we give the mandate to. And so, if you are avoiding if you are avoiding the candidature of the deputy, what are you doing with the votes of others? And that was exactly what was done in the case of Oshomole against Osumbo. There were 2 local government areas, because the judges would not do things on the basis of convenience. There were 2 local government areas, Akoko Edo and Isako Central. The total number of registered voters, because we do not know what is authentic until it is proven by the records of INEC, the total number of voters in Akoko Edo and Isako East, Isako Central, were far more than by whatever Oshomole or Osumbo was leading. So if we were saying INEC, for example, didn't have the power to repudiate and whatever, if you had said so, were you as a court right to disenfranchise those persons? Didn't they have a right? Because we're talking about democracy, which talks about the privilege, or so to speak, that the individual has to decide who governs me. Yeah. That was not done. And because the court had done, the Court of Appeal, which was the highest court they could go there, had taken that decision, they didn't have a choice. They had to follow with Mimiko's case. And so you find out that these are issues that de-enfranchises the people, just like what they did in Zamfara. And so what you have ultimately is that you find someone who could say, you could do whatever you want to do. I would go to court. If I were lucky to have technicality on my side, I would preside over you regardless of whether I win or not. And so the people's vote will not count.
Can I quickly come in, please?
Yes.
Malam Azumogo is a lawyer. And I thank God some of us were privileged to read that same law. I don't think it is nice for we to infer into a judgment your subjective perception. A judgment has been given. It is no longer subject to subjective perception. Okay. Number one, when you're also inferring things that are not principal to the case, Bukachowa and the case of Mrs. Odili in this last one are very different. Okay. They are very different, and in fact what he has said is actually extenuating. Number one, Bukachowa's husband participated in that same day's election that is in question. Bukachowa, the president of the Court of Appeal. Yeah. The husband is a direct beneficiary and the party in question. Now you are going back to Odili, who is supposedly a card-carrying member of the PDP, as it were. Even when that woman, Odili, that is Mary Odili, is in the Supreme Court, in the last case we remember, she actually recused herself from a case that was directly involving those who are direct associates. Mrs. Odili is from Imo State. Mr. Odili is from River State. The election is in Bayelsa State. All of us have relationships one way or the other across state lines. This one is not part of it. Yeah. That is on the one hand. Number two, I also want us to get this clear. Faleke's case was not a case that was foreseen either by the Constitution or the electoral law. So the Supreme Court was needed as a constitutional court now to create or point a direction therefrom, so that Nigeria will understand. Number one, the constitution of our land and the electoral law did not foresee that an election could be going on, and the principal, who is the governorship candidate, for example,
the main candidate
will do an election on a Saturday and die before the election result is pronounced the next day. If that election result was pronounced, whether or not he was sworn in, and he dies the day after being declared the winner, Mr. Faleke automatically inherits the governorship. If the election has been concluded, the election was not conclusive.
And I was saying that disruptive now because of the peculiarities of Nigeria. Yes.
It's not peculiar. It's even in the American law.
Yes.
That there is nothing known to the law that is known, as I've just said it now.
Yeah.
It doesn't also exist in the American law.
Okay.
Now, in the case of Atiku Abubakar, in 1999, Atiku Abubakar was the governor-elect of Adamawa State.
Yeah.
Only after winning the very next weekend, he was chosen by Obasanjo to become his running mate.
Yeah.
And he immediately, his own running mate in Adamawa, Boni Haruna, became governor. So that they are very different.
Okay, all right.
You know, in the case of, no, he has already spoken about it. Yeah. In the case of Imo State is what we should be introspecting, not Bayelsa. Mr. Alumatis brought something into it. He brought a spiritual dimension into the conversation.
Yeah.
And it's very painful because the man, David Lyon, is actually paying for a sin he did not commit. But unfortunately, the law sees the governorship and the presidential election as a co-pilot situation. So if the plane goes down, both of them go.
Okay. Let me get you into this now.
Sorry.
Yes.
No vex. Just to help our people.
Yes.
And for in the case of Rivers, they did not remove Omeya and left his deputy. It's a joint ticket of the party. What the law decided was who out of the two, Omeya or Mr. Rotimi, who was the authentic person that was the lead candidate in that ticket.
Yes.
So if the lead candidate in that ticket is Mr. Amechi, and it is the party that gives both the joint ticket, there was no need to remove the deputy of Omeya, because he wasn't really the deputy to Omeya, he was the deputy to whoever was the governor.
Okay, all right. Now here's the question that I want to ask. A similar scenario played out in Bauchi State. The Supreme Court decided a fresh election.
Yes.
So I'd like to get your perspective why that didn't happen in Bayelsa State.
Thank you very much. It's only in the legal profession that everybody interprets law. If a doctor, maybe a surgeon.
But we have our rights.
Yes,
we have our rights. Don't we have our right?
You have your right
to express our opinion.
You have your right
based on our own layman's understanding.
For instance, Reverend Olumatins were before a surgeon, and they said, okay, both of you suffered this and this. Same, from the tests, and he chose to treat me uniquely because of the peculiarity of how my body makeup is, and the other man differently. Will you ask him? Now, what I'm trying to say here is this. If you look at the Moazos case, like you made a statement that the court is about precedents. No, not all the way like that. Yeah. Because in all sense of it, you may really not have two exact scenarios.
Thank you.
You may not get it. Okay. You may have similarities, but on the superficial look, you may just believe that's it. You go back and study. That's why when we were in the law school, we were asked to read carefully. You go through the scenario. You may just veer off if you are not careful. Okay. So that is it. In the case of Moazo, and again, what was prayed? What was the prayer in court?
Yes.
You must understand that I cannot, Shomole's case, and it's not Ariabiri, and then I think they said the court is not the Father Christmas.
Yes.
That will give to you what you have not
asked for. Yes.
So there are things you should check the prayers, and you will see these conflicts, and you see these different application or demands from courts, as it were. And then people just come up and say, well, this man, his case, this scenario should have been, copy and paste and just planted here. It's not the same scenario. Yeah. Now, that one, at the time, it was in the wisdom of the Supreme Court to nullify that election. Why I'm not...
Order a fresh election.
Order a fresh election.
Yes.
Because if you look at the pleadings and all, you will find the reason why that is done, or was done at the time. But in this case of David Leon that everybody... Are they saying, Reverend Lomati just said something now? Okay, they said we're going to screen so that our enemies, so to say, will not take advantage of what, that means you already had this issue bothering your mind. Why didn't you just do the right thing? And now we've seen him. He had come up, like I said, he led the major campaign of what I was talking about. When we were said not to have certificates, even himself was said not to have certificates, and he went around. Olumatis is here now, he has gone through school. But it was said, it was all over the world that he doesn't have certificate, he's not Olumatis, he's not this and that. And he cleared the air. The man have not told us anything about himself. If Olumatis does not have certificate, why is he still around? Why is he not in prison? Because he fought the state at the time, and he came out and said, I have it. I went to school, I have intelligence. A lot of people came out. So what we are saying here, the man is quiet. You as a journalist, you are well unable to tell us his names. You were trying to say the one that is most accurate. You don't even know. because there are several dimensions to the names. Because you see Adegdi or something, Deji or something.
He has plenty names. So it's the ones I can remember is what I was saying.
You understand? So how will, even the Supreme Court, I will tell you, will be confused. And look at all of that. So the Supreme Court, like we have rightly established, it's not for us to cast aspersion at the Supreme Court. Maria Dili, being the wife of Peter Dili, have not erred in any way, you know, and it's not as if it's directly affecting her interest. I think there's in our rules that if your interest is there, you can now
recuse yourself.
She didn't. There's nothing. There's nobody. She is not from that state. Her husband is not involved. Okay, you may say, well, they are loyalists to her of sorts, but that have nothing to do when you border on judgment. So the Muazo's case and this, they are two different scenarios.
Okay.
And again, it's not for the onlooker to start saying, well, this is what I feel. I see people bringing up their opinion.
Yes.
What's your opinion?
Which they are entitled to.
Yes, your opinion. Right. Yes, well, they can't say, well, this is what the Supreme Court should have done. If you say, well, in my opinion, I feel it's like this. I cannot cast aspersion at the Supreme Court because, and if I have any reason to do that, there are ways to channel it. But the man you are saying you are fighting for has not said that, not come out in any press statement to say, well, my certificates were not forged, or this, I'm going to protest this, like Oshomole will help us to join around. He said we're not going to swear in the other man. Why would they swear him in? Because he has become the Supreme Court again on his own, and start saying we don't swear the PDP in, we are going to do this and do that. That's not how to go about it. If your man is clean and free, he should come out. And then the Supreme Court will look at it again. And that's why you cannot always apply to them again, and then they can check it. But I know there is nothing like that. We know very well. We know very well.
In the case of Imo State, some started accusing the Supreme Court of giving fictitious figures to the APC candidate by virtue of the way the judgment came out. In Bayelsa State, I saw a result sheet. I could authenticate it, but I saw that in the column where you had the APC, it was 0. And that, of course, made it clear that the PDP obviously will be sworn in as the party with the highest number of valid votes. Now, the controversy seems to be around the issue of having a joint ticket. I'd like to get your thoughts on that, because that seems to be the reliance sin, what you could call a vicarious suffering. Suffering for a sin you didn't commit. Yeah, let's get your thoughts.
You know, I've heard of destiny helpers.
and destiny destroyers.
That was very common. The new one now is destiny destroyers. So it's becoming prayer point in church now. At every degi or begi that want to corrupt your destiny by fire by thunder. One of the greatest embarrassment of a man is that to go to your office or your wife's office, and it looks like your son looks like one of the staff in the office. And they have been telling you that this your son is not behaving like you. They go to the office and then you see it. I'm saying so because it was Michael Jackson that sang in his Billie Jean song. So, but the child is not my own.
Yes.
And I'm saying so because of what Barrister just said. Yeah, people have been disenfranchised, may put it that way. But your child is not your child. It's not your child. You may have brought him up and taken him to university. You may be emotionally attached. Say, hey, now this guy is cool, this guy. But the truth of the matter is that that child is not your child. DNA has shown you that the child is not your child. So you may go to say, oh, but Naim bring him up. Naim they call Papa. Unfortunately, that only lies in the realm of sentiments. The child is not your child. that people may have been disenfranchised. Ab initio is that the man was not deserving of the ticket. If you pretend, we have seen where judgments have come to say this senator is a pretender to the throne. You shouldn't only abdicate that throne, but all the salaries that we have earned, you should refund it. Now, the man may have made beautiful laws, and he may even have been celebrated as a senator in his state. But you can't put something on nothing and expect it to start. The Bible says, if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Absolutely nothing. And that's why I'm saying it again and again. That, listen, it was my own responsibility to ensure, just like he said. When I was in university, somebody offered me to move to the faculty of law. I didn't have literature. And they thought that at that time they could have been able to do something about it. But I didn't have literature. Somebody else wanted me to come to, economics. I also didn't have one of the requirements. But because I know that I have this activism thing that I was going to want to, I always like to insist on what is right. I didn't go to any of those departments. My mother said she doesn't like to say sorry. So what does she do? She ensures that all her documents are complete when she's driving. Because she doesn't want to be at the mercy of the police officer. So if my father is driving, he doesn't just have his document, they are in a file. And the first page of the file is table of content. So if you're looking for where is MOT, check page 4. Because the man doesn't want to go and beg. He doesn't want to say, hey, sorry sir, no, he doesn't want to. All right, so at that level of operation, because it is sometimes you can make your mistakes anonymously. Nobody knows you because you are upcoming. Yeah. But there's a level you get to. My father says you don't apologize, not because you are proud, but because your mistakes have been considerably minimized. All right? So something as humongous as this, because in a federating unit, Bayelsa State indeed is a country of its own. So something as important as that, and several people's destinies and careers are involved. Because at that level, you are no longer just a candidate and a deputy. It's an institution. I'm sure people had relocated. I'm sure that the man had his own kitchen cabinet and so you can imagine all of the things. Billions of naira had been spent both to prepare for the election on the part of the party and then on the part of INEC and on the part of the individual. All of that just went down the drain. For what? Because one of the guys just didn't have what it takes. Like my people would say, when flies follows a man around, the physics is not a big one. It's a very small, one. Unfortunately, it is as pungent as the mass of what you may have, on the ground. So, and that's why I'm saying that we're looking at the wrong direction. The Imo, state, I also thought so, to be honest with you. You know what happens between truth and falsehood is that falsehood goes ahead of truth, but runs hard to require distance. Okay. So when falsehood is tired, truth begins to gallop. So that's what we also thought. We thought that it was a compensation because there was no small hoopla or uproar, so to speak, against the Supreme Court. When you now look at the intricacies, when you now read, and then it goes to buttress the point when somebody said that if you want to hide something from a black man, put it in a book. Because I imagine that what the guy must have submitted for screening was a kind of mini book. And then we couldn't just go through the details of looking at the thing one after the other. And alas, you get there. And then after, the labor. Indeed, this is what the worry people will say. There's no typical case of more than monkey they walk, baboon they chop. Maybe this one so.
Okay, just on the verge of concluding this discussion, I want us to look at it from the perspective of avoiding scenario like this ever playing itself out. Are the political parties learning, or have they learned, Ambassador Nurdin?
Well, that is if we had parties in the first place. That is the starting point. Because here you deal with people who are pathologically hubristic. We don't want to call names so that you don't begin to say whatever, but you find the leadership who appropriate to itself the knowledge of everything. You're talking about medicine, is a professor of medicine. You're talking about law, is a professor of law. You're talking about engineering, anything. He is the authority. Meanwhile, he's completely olu, a mental destitute. Now, when you deal with these categories of persons, you find, for days I couldn't listen to news. I don't know Leon, I'm not from Bayelsa, but I felt completely devastated because I said, what were we going to manage? I gave you the example of a young lady who had gotten to her final year, who was not clear. The primary school result is ours, the secondary is ours. I gave her money. I have spoken to anybody. I said, she suffered the misfortune of meeting with a man who said, I'm now your mother's husband. And so all the years in school gone down the drain. But if we had approached the awarding institutions, would they deny that we didn't give this? But if we knew that there would be no opportunity for us to do all of this explication, why not we say, wait, we'll give you some other thing. We can make you secretary to government where you don't require this. Yeah. But what did we get? Well, you find just one individual. One individual. You know, what is saddest is that the poorest of the poor are those who superintend over our affairs. And so we have the issues. The people are those unfortunate. That's my pain. It's not about whatever. Okay. The people are those who are shortchanged because the man they did not give the title to is the one wearing the crown. Should
Deji Boborokuma Adeji, should he be prosecuted?
Obviously.
Yeah, but Supreme I'm not sure if there was any pronouncement along those lines.
There don't have to be a pronouncement.
Okay. Except if you are saying there's a forgery, otherwise you won't prosecute. Okay. Because don't forget that the man in Senate, people say he didn't have whatever, until he brought the ABU man to say, I have this, I have that, and those kind of, until and unless there is a forgery. Supposing there is no crime anyway, if I decide tomorrow to answer Duke Okosun to write an exam with my picture, I say, that's the name I want to answer. Except that those certificates are not his. Okay. The fact that he had different names does not make him liable for
let me get your take on that.
Now, from judgment that is available now, he should be called upon for questioning. And he should explain himself to the police, as the case may be. And if he can't do that, then they should prefer charge against him, and then he should go on.
Okay, somebody
talked about serve as a deterrent.
Okay, somebody talked about due diligence in the emergence of candidates. This is a different perspective on the whole issue, because I believe the political party, if they don't do diligence, I'm sure would have gotten here.
I think I will just continue from where Malam Asumogik stopped. He said we have the parties. He said there are political parties. One, the second one, he said, the parties have been run by persons who seem to have a monumental hubristic disposition, tragic pride, not knowing enough and aggregating to yourself knowledge of all. Now, once that happens, the first thing to fly out the door is diligence. If you have the laws of the Electoral Act, is the law of the land that guides the election, it is easy to meet, particularly when that same Electoral Act is prescribing the minimalist, if there's any word like that. Yeah, you could have chosen that. He's telling you, you just need primary school certificate, and then it tells you you don't even need a secondary school certificate, but proof that you attended. He said the person should have attended secondary school, GC, or its equivalent. Absolutely. So it is which means you can actually submit an all F9 result, so long as you can prove that. It did not even, the Supreme Court last one now has said that you don't even need to submit, so long as you depose that it did exist. Yeah. So why are people coming up with degrees that they did not earn, coming up with certificates that they do not need? I'll give you one very simple example. Many people, maybe I hope he doesn't get upset over this. In 1999, why still grasping with how these things will play out? The governor of Edo State, the man that ran for governorship of Edo State, Mr. Lucky Igbenedion, Chief Lucky Igbenedion was Mr., actually tendered his Edo College result, because it was proved beyond all doubt. So whether the university in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, and all those, there was no need for it. When I was running, I tendered my first degree. The others were saying, why? Even those who were helping me fill the form in their court parties.
The other one.
The other one. I said, see the other ones, leave them.
Put this
and
one.
he asked me, say, why? I said, I don't see the need. Number two, my master's was a certified true copy from UI. The reason why we have been awarded the degrees, we've even done whatever. The postgraduate school got razed to the ground in 1991 in Ibadan. So everybody's certificates, the school university of Ibadan insisted that since they've already printed the original copies, they will not reprint. They can only give us certified true copies. Okay. Meanwhile, I didn't burn the place.
Yeah.
And I said, there's no need to put PhD. Let's just put this one, maybe we leave it like that. So what I'm just saying is, the parties can do due diligence the day they begin to see themselves as an institution and not a vehicle for dispensing personal gratifications, for putting people in place. Well, that is where the problem is.
Hello, Martins. Yeah.
Well, I think in the final analysis, I remember Proverbs says, here's that a man that is wise in his own conceit. There's more hope for a fool than him. Just to buttress what if you think that you know everything, it means that you don't require other people's counsel.
Yes.
And the multitude of counsel is safety. So you're not even going to ask, even if you're going astray. Secondly, I see the APC in Bayelsa as like what happened to Israel. Achan was the one that stole their costing and hid it. But it affected the whole, of the camp. And they needed to go and ask. So where can this thing really affect us? So where is it? So this thing that seemed to have been affecting Bayelsa, that also affected Zamfara, that affected the rivers. It's an accost thing.
Okay, you are saying it's a pattern.
Yeah, there's a pattern.
He said it's a hubristic disposition.
We need to find
I hope you are not holding my Ogato ransom.
No, I'm not even. I'm a preacher, so I am. And yesterday was Sunday, so maybe I've not yet removed the gavel. But just like you also said, sir, to agree with you, when you want to rent a house, you may not do due diligence. It's 1 year, 2 years. So if you're not satisfied, you change the house. But when you want to buy a house, all right, you do due diligence. And it's a problem with the black man. I remember we used to sell properties in Lagos. If what we call Yimbo comes to do due diligence for you, won't believe what he's looking at. He's looking at those aluminium on the window. Places that your eyes will not go to. He wants to see how perfect your finishing is. He doesn't look at the walls. He looks at the little details. But the black man doesn't do that. He just looks at the fact that the humongous building looks beautiful, looks grandiose, and then he goes ahead to buy. So it's a lesson for the future to say, how did we get here?
How should the party, the people of Bayelsa respond to it? We've heard of protests until there was a dusk to dawn curfew declared in the state, and heard of properties destroyed in the radio station in the state, Bayelsa Radio. Some have been sent on indefinite suspension over accusations of maybe being involved in protests and stuff like that. I don't know what our thoughts along those lines, Malanuruddin.
Nothing. Ever last week, APC didn't win any seat in Imo. The speaker is APC now, and they are gradually changing. For as long as we deal with people who have no value, for as long as there is food, they call Malu brother in order to have it. We continue to have problems.
Okay, Barrister, I was arguing the same thing. All right, thank you, gentlemen, for your time on TMI Monday. Reverend Olumbati, thank you for coming.
Thank you,
Dr. Don Pedro, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Barrister Awosage, main thanks. Barrister Nuruddin, thank you for coming. We'll take a short break. We've got a couple of interviews coming up, and that will be after this short break. Don't go away. Stay TMI Monday.